It doesn't start with avoidance, it starts with relief. Relief when plans get canceled. Relief when the message says, we can do it another time. Relief when the door closes and the noise of the outside world fades. This is the psychology of people who prefer staying at home rather than going outside. For many people, home is not just a location, it's a nervous system state. It's where the body finally unclenches, where breathing slows, where the mind doesn't have to scan, adjust, or anticipate. Outside requires response. Inside allows rest. People often misunderstand this preference. They label it as laziness, as antisocial behavior, as fear of life. But for most people who prefer staying home, none of that is true. They are not hiding from life. They are regulating themselves within it. The outside world is highly stimulating. Even on a normal day, there is sound, movement, interaction, expectation, and unpredictability. For some nervous systems, this stimulation is energizing. For others, it is taxing. People who prefer staying home often have nervous systems that process deeply. They notice tone shifts. They feel emotional undercurrents. They register subtle changes in environment. Their brains do not filter aggressively. So everything comes in at full volume. Crowded places feel loud even when they aren't. Conversations feel intense even when they're casual. Social environments require constant calibration. None of this is conscious. It's biological. So when they return home, something important happens. The body signals safety. The nervous system exits alert mode. The mind stops bracing. The need to manage disappears. Home is not an escape. It's a reset. Many people who prefer staying home are not introverted in the traditional sense. They enjoy people. They enjoy conversation. They enjoy connection. But they prefer it in controlled doses because connection costs energy, and energy is something they protect carefully. This creates a gap in understanding. Others see withdrawal. They feel preservation. Others see absence. They feel balance. Social culture often equates presence with participation. If you're not out, you're assumed to be missing out. But presence can exist without physical visibility, and fulfillment does not require constant stimulation. Many people who prefer staying home develop this preference early. Sometimes, home was the only predictable place. Sometimes, it was the only environment where emotions felt manageable. Sometimes, it was simply where they learned to self-soothe. Children who learn to regulate themselves early often grow into adults who value solitude, not because they were neglected, but because they learned how to exist without external validation. They learned how to entertain themselves, how to sit with boredom, how to process emotions internally. This creates comfort with stillness. For them, silence isn't empty. It's full of thoughts, full of reflection, full of internal dialogue. This is why staying home doesn't feel lonely to them. Loneliness is the absence of meaningful connection. Solitude is the presence of self. People who prefer staying home often dislike environments that demand performance. Outside spaces frequently require roles: being interesting, being responsive, being available, being on. Home allows them to take those layers off. There is no audience at home, no impression to manage, no energy to maintain. They don't have to be engaging. They don't have to be productive. They don't have to be anything. This is especially true for people who are emotionally intelligent, those who read rooms easily, those who sense tension, those who notice what others don't say. Emotional awareness is powerful, but it's also exhausting. When you are emotionally alert all the time, rest becomes essential. And home is where emotional alertness finally shuts down. Many people who prefer staying home are also highly imaginative. Their inner world is active. They think, they plan, they replay, they create. External stimulation interrupts that flow, so staying home protects their internal rhythm. This doesn't mean they fear novelty. It means they prefer intentional engagement over constant exposure. They don't want noise for the sake of noise. They want meaning. This preference often clashes with social pressure. You should go out more. You're wasting your youth. You'll regret staying in. But these statements assume one universal definition of fulfillment, and there isn't one. Rest is not laziness. Choosing quiet is not weakness. And staying home is not a failure of ambition. In fact, many people who prefer staying home are deeply ambitious. They just don't tie ambition to visibility. They think long-term. They plan internally. They conserve energy. The world rewards loud progress. But not all progress is loud. Some growth happens quietly. There's also often a history of overstimulation. People who grew up in chaotic environments frequently crave calm as adults, not because calm is boring, but because calm was missing. If unpredictability shaped their early years, predictability feels grounding later. If they had to adapt constantly, stability becomes precious. Home offers consistency. This preference can sometimes be mistaken for avoidance, but avoidance is driven by fear. Preference is driven by self-knowledge. That said, there can be moments where staying home becomes a defense, where comfort turns into confinement, and this is where honesty matters. The question isn't, why do I stay home? The question is, am I choosing this freely or avoiding something unresolved? There is a difference. Healthy preference feels restorative. Avoidance feels restrictive. One expands your life, the other shrinks it. People who prefer staying home often understand this distinction intuitively. They leave when they want to. They stay when they need to. They listen to their energy instead of fighting it. This self-trust is not accidental. It comes from years of learning what overstimulation costs them. Over time, many people like this become very selective. Selective with plans. Selective with people. Selective with commitments. This is not arrogance, it's sustainability. They know that saying yes too often leads to burnout, so they protect their capacity. However, this selectivity can also bring guilt. They may feel like they're disappointing others, like they're not doing enough. Especially in cultures that glorify constant activity, they may push themselves to go out despite exhaustion, and afterward, they feel drained, not because the experience was bad, but because it ignored their limits. This creates a cycle. Overextend, crash, withdraw. The solution is not forcing extroversion, it's honoring regulation. There's nothing wrong with preferring environments that support your nervous system. There's nothing wrong with choosing peace over stimulation. There is nothing wrong with building a life that feels manageable. Many people who prefer staying home are deeply empathetic. They care intensely, which is exactly why they need distance sometimes. Care without rest turns into depletion. They often become the listener, the supporter, the emotionally available one. And home is where they stop holding space for others. Eventually, the body demands balance. Rest is not optional forever. This is why people like this often resist environments that feel emotionally chaotic, not because they can't handle emotions, but because they handle too many. Over time, they learn something important. They learn that peace is not boring, it's protective. They learn that stillness allows clarity, that quiet reveals truth, that slowing down helps them hear themselves again. And when they do go out, it's intentional. They show up present, they engage deeply, they leave fulfilled, not drained. The truth is this: people who prefer staying at home understand something many others overlook. Energy is finite, and life feels better when it's spent consciously. They are not disengaged from life. They are engaged on their own terms. If this resonates with you, there is nothing wrong with you. Your preference for calm makes sense. Your love for quiet makes sense. Your need for space makes sense. You do not need to live louder to live fully. You do not need constant motion to be meaningful. You do not need to explain why rest feels good to you. Some people find themselves in crowds. Others find themselves in quiet rooms. Both are valid. Home is not a limitation for you. It's a foundation. And from that foundation, you can build a life that feels intentional, grounded, and sustainable. A life where peace is not something you earn after exhaustion, but something you allow yourself every day. Because sometimes, staying home isn't choosing less, it's choosing what actually supports you. And that choice is not avoidance, it's awareness. And as life moves forward, this preference often becomes clearer, not weaker. People who prefer staying home begin to recognize patterns. They notice how their body reacts after too much stimulation, how their patience shortens, how their thoughts become scattered, how rest feels delayed instead of restorative. So they begin choosing differently, not out of fear, but out of understanding. They learn that protecting their energy allows them to show up better when it actually matters. That presence is deeper when it isn't forced. That connection feels richer when it isn't constant. They stop measuring their life by how often they leave the house and start measuring it by how aligned they feel when they return to themselves. This is not withdrawal, it's discernment. It's knowing that your nervous system has a language and learning to listen to it instead of overriding it. Because when you stop fighting the way you're wired, you stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone else. And in that acceptance, life doesn't shrink. It softens, it steadies, and it finally begins to feel like something you can live inside, not just survive.